Welcome to the Talk Like a Leader podcast, where we explore the mindset, skill set, and habit set of leadership communication. Using these tips, techniques, and tactics, you'll be able to talk like a leader to build better relationships and get more done. Your host is Guy Harris, who has more than 20 years of combined professional and military experience in consulting, coaching, and training in areas like team and interaction dynamics, communication strategies and tactics, as well as emotional intelligence. Take it away, Guy.
Hi, this is Guy Harris. Welcome to Talk Like a Leader. This week's episode is titled More Context on Selling Change You Don't Like. This is a expansion episode, adding context to an episode I did 2 weeks ago. There'll be a link to that episode in the show notes for this episode. And I'll also link that episode to this one, so it's easy to go back and forth and kind of find your place between these two episodes. Now, in the last episode, I had put an epilogue on it saying that I would be releasing more context the following week. Well, that following week happened to be the first week of the new year. And so what happened is illness, holidays, and a windstorm collided to take out the windows of time I had to record, and the episode I intended to release last week didn't get recorded in time to do so. So here it is this week. On with more context on selling change you don't like. The reason I'm recording this episode is that as I listened to the last episode and I listed the 4 things you could do to get better at selling change you don't like, I realized that there's room for misinterpretation. And I know there's room for misinterpretation because of conversations I've had with people and in both training and coaching where people wrestle with some of the ideas I'm proposing. And an initial interpretation, by the way, a completely honest and high integrity interpretation of what I'm saying, is that you need to be inauthentic and to fake it so that you can convince other people to buy something that you don't like yourself. And let me expressly say that that is not my point at all. Let me back up a little bit, though, and remind you of what those 4 points are so you can kind of put the context together. What I said, the 4 things you can do, I'll do them in rapid succession. The 4 things you can do to sell change you don't like are 1, assume benign intent, and that benign intent is directed towards the person who's asking you to implement this change so that you're open-minded about engaging the conversation with this person. To then 2, get your questions answered. And once you get your questions answered, you can then 3, look for reasons that you can legitimately support the change and be aware of any bias that you might have, knowing that I personally have this bias, is to sort of reject the change out of hand because it's a change and to look for the reasons why it won't work instead of the reasons it will work. So basically saying, question the negativity bias and see if we can find reasons we can support the change. And then once we found reasons we can support the change, then we go communicate with our team. And as they have questions of their own, which is quite normal, they're going to ask about any reservations you have. And I think it's important to acknowledge that even though I can be supportive of a change, there might be pieces of it or elements of it that I still have some reservation about. So the 4th idea is to be honest about your reservations. Don't blow smoke at people. Don't lie to people. Don't pretend that you think everything's hunky-dory. Don't be Pollyanna. Be honest about the reservations and at the same time verbalize your hope for the future that if you engage in this change for the reasons that you found you could support in step 3, that you're hopeful it'll work out. So the steps are, or the 4 things you can do are assume benign intent, get your questions answered, look for reasons that you can support the change, and then be honest with your team about any reservations and at the same time express hope you can work it out. Now, what I realize is that if we're not really careful and think about some of the nuance in those 4 steps, it can sound like, or I might unintentionally communicate the idea that I think you are obligated to get on board and be all excited about every change that ever happens in your organization, even if it's illegal, immoral, or unethical. And that's absolutely not what I'm saying. I'm saying that what we want to do is to beware of our own biases that might make us resistant to the change ourselves, question those biases, Be open to the idea that maybe there's something positive here. Look for that positive. Try to raise that to the surface and focus on that in preference to the negative. I didn't say to ignore the negative. I didn't say to pretend that everything is perfect and that there will be no challenges, because that's not real life. There will be challenges. Problems will come up. Some of your reservations may be completely legitimate. Some of the frustrations or concerns your team has could be completely legitimate. And it could be barriers to the change or problems that will be revealed by the change as you move forward. The idea is to optimistically confront those challenges with the desire to resolve them, rather than pessimistically look at those challenges as reasons not to go forward. So hopefully that adds some context. I'm not suggesting that you be inauthentic. I am not suggesting that you lie to your team. I am not suggesting that you try to control them to try to make them get on board. Not my idea at all. What I'm suggesting is that I want to be aware of my thinking. I'm going to encourage you to be aware of your thinking. Look for ways to adjust your thinking, just like I attempt, and by the way, I'm not perfect at this, attempt to adjust my thinking so that when I'm engaging with a person who has an idea about a change, a boss, a coworker, almost anybody, who is proposing a change that maybe I have some concerns about right up front, that I remain open to engage with that person in a way that is hopeful about the future and can have a conversation or a dialogue that leads to uncovering the reasons to buy into the change, or possibly to modify it as we learn more things together, so that we can move forward together and that this change that gets proposed doesn't become the stumbling block to blow our relationship apart. Now, let's add this caveat. I said this once, and I want to say it again, so I'm really, really clear on this point. If the proposed change is illegal, immoral, unethical, unsafe, going to get somebody hurt, any of those things, then I say fight tooth and nail to resist it and do everything you can in your power to make sure that the things you do are legal, moral, ethical, doesn't get anybody hurt. If it comes down to it's a change I just don't like, though, not liking a change may or may not really be a reason to resist it. If it's better for the organization overall, if it's going to ultimately be better for all of us, even if it creates some temporary discomfort for me and my team, it's probably worth considering in the interest of helping the organization get better. I hope that's clear. And the idea is not about controlling other people, manipulating other people, lying to other people, trying to persuade them of something that is harmful to them, anything of that nature. The idea I'm trying to convey is let's look for reasons why we can, if not enthusiastically, at least optimistically, accept changes that we don't like. Engage with our team in a way that conveys that optimism and helps them get on board with it. Again, even if maybe they don't like it, they're at least willing to move in the direction. And the key is they're willing to move in that direction because they have bought into the change, not because they feel coerced into accepting the change. I also have lived long enough and seen enough situations to know that there are some do it or else situations that are mandated from, quote, higher up in the organization. I get that. Been there. Had to deal with it. I'm not pretending they don't exist. What I am suggesting is that most of the time, we're dealing with reasonable, rational people. And if we can work to understand, get ourselves on board, see the bigger organizational mission picture, probably we can find something we can buy into. Again, even if we're not enthusiastic about it, we can at least buy into it. And if we can master that art of acknowledging the potential challenges we'll face and still be hopeful of a good outcome and be able to convey that mindset to others, you can talk like a leader. This has been the Talk Like a Leader podcast. You can listen to this show every week wherever you get your podcast. If you haven't, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm Guy Harris, and thanks for listening.